Chair.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. We are on the record in case number 2024-00141, electronic examination of the application of the fuel adjustment clause of Big Rivers Electric Corporation from November 1st through 2022 through April 30th, 2023, and May 1st, 2023 through October 31st, 2023. My name is Angie Hatton. I'm Chair of the Kentucky Public Service Commission, and joining me today is Mary Pat Regan, Commissioner. If you have cell phones, please set them to silent or turn them off. The hearing today is for the purpose of taking evidence in this matter. At this time, we'll have entry of appearance of counsel. For the applicant.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tyson Kamhoff, General Counsel for Big Rivers Electric Corporation.
Morning.
Morning.
And for staff.
Jeff Penny on behalf of the Commission.
Morning, Chair. Okay, I've been advised that public notice has been given and filed into the record. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Any outstanding motions besides the confidential treatment motion?
No.
We'll do public comment and then we'll swear in the witnesses.
Your Honor, we got word this morning that nobody has requested to make comments.
Okay. Is anyone here in the audience for the purpose of making public comment today? Seeing no one, if anyone does wish to provide public comment, you may also always do so by following the instructions on our website at psc.ky.gov. Written comments may always be submitted by sending an email to psc.comment@ky.gov. And please let the record show that the instructions and link to provide public comments have been posted on our website for at least the past day. Okay. We'll move on to presenting evidence, and we'll swear the witnesses in as a panel. Counsel, if you would just name your witnesses for me, and then I'll ask them to raise their right hands to be sworn.
Yes, Your Honor. So I have with me, I have Don Gully, Chris Warren, Katie Cheatham, Vicki Payne, and Jeff Brown.
Okay. If everyone would raise your right hand, please, to be sworn. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is true and correct under penalty of perjury?
I do.
Okay. You may lower your hand. And I guess, do you want to go ahead with your direct?
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Gully, would you please state your name, position, and business address for the record?
Yes, Don Gully, President and CEO of Big Rivers Electric Corporation. Business address is 710 West 2nd Street, Owensboro, 42301.
And did you sponsor responses to information requests in this matter?
I did.
Do you have any changes or corrections to those responses?
I do not.
And do you adopt those responses as your testimony today?
I do.
Mr. Warren, would you please state your name, position, and business address for the record?
Chris Warren, Executive Director of Budgeting, Planning, and Forecasting. My business address is 710 West 2nd Street, Owensboro, Kentucky, 42301.
Did you sponsor responses to information requests in this matter?
I did.
Do you have any changes or corrections to those responses?
I do not.
And do you adopt those responses as your testimony today?
I do.
Ms. Cheatham, would you please state your name and business?
Katie Cheatham, Manager of Accounting. Business address is 710 West 2nd Street, Owensboro, Kentucky, 42301.
And did you sponsor a response to an information request in
I
this
did.
matter? And do you have any changes or corrections to that response?
I do not.
And do you adopt that response as your testimony today?
I did.
Ms. Payne, would you please state your name, position, and business address for the record?
Vicki Payne, Manager of Fuel Procurement, 710 West 2nd Street, Owensboro, Kentucky, 42301.
Did you sponsor responses to information requests in this matter?
I did.
Do you have any changes or corrections to those responses?
I do not.
And do you adopt those responses as your testimony today? Mr. Brown, will you please state your name, position, and business address for the record?
Yes, Jeff Brown, Director of Maintenance Services and Project Management, business address 710 West 2nd Street, Owensboro, Kentucky, 42301.
Did you sponsor responses to information requests in this matter?
I did.
Do you have any changes or corrections to those responses?
I do. On 1-15.
Can you say which case number?
Oh, I'm sorry. Case number 00141, response 1-15. The Reed Station Unit 2 outage schedule, the date is wrong for April 2023. And the actual, it should be 2023 instead of 2024. There's a typo.
$115, you said, I'm sorry to.
Yeah, 115. Yes, sir.
Give me a second to get there.
And that's the attachment, in which page of the attachment?
It's the first page of the attachment, the Reed Station Unit 2, page 105.
And what was the correction?
The very last month, April 2023, on the actual dates, it should be
Okay.
2023 instead of 2024.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have any other changes or corrections?
I do not.
And with that one change, do you adopt the responses that you sponsored as your testimony?
I do.
The witnesses are available for cross-examination.
Okay. Mr. Penny?
Your Honor, Mr. Rognes is going to help me out by passing out what we would identify for identification purposes as PSC staff exhibit number 1.
You have some very able help. While we're doing that, do we need to talk a little bit about confidentiality? Or has counsel broached that already this morning? Thank you, sir.
I've talked to the general counsel for Big Rivers, and we think that we have addressed it. I will try to ask my questions in a way that will not broach any confidential information or require us going into confidential session. If we do, Mr. Camlett, just wag a finger or one, we'll go into confidential session.
Okay.
We've agreed that some information that was previously confidential is now on the public record.
Okay. Beyond wagging a finger, speak up loudly and quickly and let me know. I don't want to breach confidentiality, but this is a little bit unusual in this case, I think. You got a copy? Did you get a copy?
Yes, ma'am, thank you, appreciate it.
All right, counsel.
All right, thank you. All right, so remembering that, Mr. Gully, I don't think you've testified at a fuel adjustment clause hearing, have you?
This is a first for me.
Okay, so while you're in the witness stand, the way that this is performed is that if I ask a question, anybody on the panel can answer it just as long as they identify themselves first for the record and then provide the answer for it. So, and that way, if you don't think that you or any of the witnesses can answer the question, they can refer to one of the others. And they can answer it and don't have to wait for them to show up at the hot seat.
Okay.
All right, so, could you please refer to what we've identified as PSC staff exhibit number 1? All right.
Yes.
And this is a copy of a order of the Federal Electric Regulatory Commission, entered on September 5th, 2024. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And now, can somebody please explain briefly what this order is about?
Yes, this is a stipulation and consent agreement, a settlement agreement with FERC as a result of actions that Big Rivers took in July, late June, early July of 2023. It had to do with green outages, scheduling of outages, moving from a forced outage into operation. And then a second issue as a result of us offering the green unit at a level that it was not able to perform at. The independent market monitor identified it as an issue. This happened prior to my getting there, but all of the settlement and work with FERC occurred under my guidance.
Okay. All right. And thank you. And then when you refer to the green unit or green station, you're talking about there are two, the green, I guess for lack of a better, green station unit. There are 2 gas-fired units that have been
Correct.
converted from coal
Correct.
to natural gas burning.
Correct.
Right?
This was for Green Station 1, 235 megawatt unit, correct.
Was it Green Station 1 or Green Station 2?
I'm sorry, it was Green 2.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and then so I'll ask everybody to turn to page 4 of the Exhibit 1, the FERC order. Give everybody a second to get there. And then please look at the listings under violations, section number 2 there.
Yes.
And specifically, look at the ones, I think it would be, looking at sub A under 24. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it says that that from June 29th through July 6th, essentially that there were scheduled outages that were reported as forced to MISO. Is that correct?
Correct.
Now, I would like to seek a point of clarification, and it can be from council as well. In this settlement agreement, did Big Rivers admit to those violations?
There was no admission of fault in the settlement agreement.
Okay, all right. So then, in that, for these dates, and I'm not looking at the later dates, and from July 6th through to July 25th, just solely from June 29th through July 6th. Was the allegation that in order to avoid certain penalties imposed by MISO, that Big Rivers reported a continuation of a scheduled outage as forced outages to MISO?
Yes.
Okay. So I would now ask people to refer to the Big Rivers response to Commission's first data request, 1-15, specifically page 3 of 4. So this is in case of 2024-149. And that's 1-15, page 3 of 4. Is the attachment?
Yes.
Just, I know, there's,
It's the numbering on the attachments.
no, that's fair to say.
Yes, are not consistent.
And this may not be a question for you, Mr. Gully, but are there other witnesses to this page?
Jeff Brown.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Brown. All right, so bearing in mind the alleged violations and the dates upon which they occurred from June 29th through July 6th that are referenced in the FERC order, looking at the outages here on the attachment to the responses, there are 3 outages for Green Station Unit 2, one dated June 29th, one dated July 1st, and the other July 5th, that are listed as forced outages. Is that correct? Given the information in the FERC order, should those outages still be listed as forced outages? Because I will acknowledge that the responses to the data requests were filed prior to the issuance of the FERC order. Let me ask this. I will rephrase the question. Had these responses to the PSC data request been provided after the issuance of the FERC order, would the designation of the outages been different?
Jeff Brown responding. We enter our outages into our GAD system, and we have the ability to go back and edit. So yes, we would go back and change it to match the order.
Okay. And so that being the case, would that affect the inputs into the calculation of the FAC factor for the relevant expense month? And it may not be a question that can be answered today, but Commission staff would be happy to answer that in a post-hearing data request. And the reason that I ask is that the recovery of purchase power cost to replace, to replace forced outages versus scheduled outages is handled differently in the fuel adjustment clause. So giving that context, can anybody hazard a guess as to would this have been treated differently in the inputs to the fuel adjustment clause? And if yes, would that have affected the calculation for that expense amount of the FAC factor?
Katie Cheatham responding. Yes, that would be something we would have to look at, the forced outages. We assign anything greater than 6 hours. We do assign fuel costs and break those out separately.
Okay.
I cannot do the calculation on the stand, but it would definitely be something we'd have to look at and could provide in a post-hearing data request.
Okay, all right. I would appreciate that. We'll make sure to follow up with that in a written data request. Okay. I have no further questions on this, but unless anybody wants to make further comment on the order, the FERC order, we'll move on to the next line of questioning. That's okay.
Would we call that redirect? or-
Yeah, to redirect, I'm sorry.
If you'd
I
like to
apologize.
redirect on this
I've
issue.
hijacked the proceeding, Your Honor. I'll be quiet.
All right.
I don't have-
I think that does make sense, though, if you would like to redirect on this issue before we go forward.
I don't have any redirect on this
Oh.
issue. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And at this moment, I'd like to move this be accepted into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection.
All right, thank you.
Let it be admitted as staff exhibit 1.
All right, give me a second, Your Honor. We have two things heading this way. The first thing that Mr. Rognus is handing out on my behalf is a document that was filed in case number 2019-356. It is a confidential document, and we have marked it for identification purposes as Commission Staff Confidential Exhibit Number 1. And it is comprised of testimony and a proposed retail service agreement. And the second document that Mr. Rognus is handing out is labeled for identification purposes as PSC Staff Exhibit Number 2. This is the public redacted version of the agreement that is referenced in the documents that I just handed out. Give everybody a second to take a look at that. Now, I will try to ask my questions in a way that won't make us go into confidential session. I believe that even though the name of the customer was confidential in the contracts, it means it was redacted or given confidential treatment.
Yes.
It's subsequently been revealed in public, correct?
Yes.
So we no longer have to give that name confidential treatment. And so that company, the client, the customer is named NewCo, correct?
Correct.
And some elements of the contract have been made public as well, as I recall. I would refer everybody to the case number 2024-141, specifically the responses to Commission staff's third request for information. Is that correct? No, not sorry, correct. That is correct, but may have everybody refer to that. Now, is it correct that in these responses to Commission staff's data requests that NewCo, for energy sales to NewCo under the retail service agreement, And the retail service agreement is the redacted version, the redacted PSC staff exhibit 2, plus it was attached to PSC confidential exhibit number 1. That pursuant to that retail service agreement, sales for a specific period of time to NewCo are not subject to any credits or surcharges. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And among those surcharges and relevant to today's hearing, one of those surcharges is the fuel adjustment clause.
That is correct.
Is that correct? Okay, thank you very much. And then, so can you tell me a little bit about the history of this contract, please? And understanding that you were not here at the time it was negotiated or approved by the commission.
Yes, yes. NewCo is a load that is approximately 150 megawatts. Initially, the thought was that NewCo would be a 200 megawatt load located in Brandenburg. And this NewCo project was very important to the local community there in terms of the economic impact, improvements that it would have. It was important to Big Rivers and to the region, to the member owners, and I'll explain that a little bit later, and also to the state. This was a massive effort to locate a large manufacturing company in Kentucky that would bring jobs, would bring secondary impact, would bring tax benefits, and would be just generally good for the state. It was a multi-agency effort to bring NewCo to that location, and working with the state and local community, working with Big Rivers, working with our member owners, in order to bring that investment to Kentucky. Now, in doing that, there was negotiations around the contract. That's your exhibit attached to the testimony of Bob Berry.
Excuse, I'm sorry to interrupt. Who is Bob Berry?
I'm sorry, Bob Berry, former CEO of Big Rivers.
Thank you.
Yes, attached to his testimony is the agreement. There was conversation around this contract, the terms and conditions of the contract to bring NewCo to that location. It did improve Big Rivers' financial situation. We were below investment grade rating for a period of time as a result of smelter load loss that many of you are aware of. Big Rivers lost about 60% of its load and revenues and was challenged and near the brink of bankruptcy. This would provide a major benefit to Big Rivers members. In signing this agreement, it improved Big Rivers' financial situation such that the ratings agencies improved Big Rivers' credit rating. By improving Big Rivers' credit rating, it lowered our future financing costs that brought benefits to the members. I'm going to say this customer is a unicorn. This is a and I say customer, it is a member. It is a member of Meade County, and when this was initially discussed and the contract subsequently approved by the commission, I don't think the conversation around FAC was ever had. That was many steps beyond where they were in terms of getting NewCo to land at that location. I'm gonna stop you, look like you have a
Well,
question.
I do have a question. So when you say you don't think that the FAC was in mind, do you mean that it wasn't specifically thought the FAC wouldn't apply to the sales, or it wasn't thought about how it would be handled by Big Rivers?
It was not talked about how it would be handled during these negotiations and subsequently during the approval process. There was never conversations. I believe one of the questions there was there ever an order issued around the FAC and its treatment on NewCo and that it was not.
And by treatment, do you mean how Big Rivers would treat it?
Correct.
With regard to the recovery or not recovery of the costs?
Correct.
Et cetera, okay.
Correct.
All right.
So let's talk about the recovery.
Well, yeah.
I'm sorry.
I'm going to interrupt you there for 1 second. So just to clarify, there is no, to the best of anybody's knowledge, no guidance from the Public Service Commission, no order from the Public Service Commission in this docket or others to say that the fuel costs, fuel and power costs, I'm going to include those together, to provide energy service to Big River should be included or excluded, or the sales to Big River, to NewCo from Big Rivers during this period of time should be excluded or included in the fuel adjustment clause for the purposes of calculating the FAC factor.
Not to my knowledge.
No guidance from the PSC at all about that at that time.
I'm sorry.
There was no guidance from the PSC at all. Was there communication?
Not to my knowledge.
It was
Not to my
before,
knowledge.
it was before you and before me, so, as far as we know. Was there any communication with the PSC at all about this contract as it was being negotiated?
Not to my knowledge. Not to my knowledge. And so you think about the treatment of the FAC. And what is FAC? It is costs associated with fuel for member load that then is paid for by the members. The back end, or I'm calling it the back end of NewCo, that's precisely how we are handling it, like we would every other member of Big Rivers. Any fuel associated with member load is spread among all the members and goes through the calculation of FAC by our staff and subsequently put before this commission for approval. The difference with NewCo and this unicorn member is that the front end is different. And the front end being the contract price. It was a fixed contract price. It excluded FAC, but it was for a finite period of time. There's a period of time that NewCo.
And I think that's
I understand,
confidential still.
I'm sticking within the guidelines of confidentiality. There's a period of time that NewCo will not pay FAC. That changes. And then they, on the front end, they will look like every other member that is there. There was a number of issues that came up during the negotiations, during the implementation and the execution of this contract. There were 2 wind contracts that Big Rivers was negotiating at the time that was going to help support this new load. I'm sorry, not wind, solar. There were 2 solar contracts that were being evaluated and near completion, near signed, but COVID happened. And COVID was a game changer for everyone. During that time, the cost of those solar contracts, the developers pulled the contracts, did not go through with the deal. There was transmission upgrade requirements. They used that as a means to not go forward with the pricing that was initially offered in a term sheet to Big Rivers. And subsequent to that, Big Rivers could not enter into those solar contracts because the price after COVID had just accelerated and it was not economical for our members. And so we did not enter into those 2 contracts. We did later enter into a solar contract, 160 megawatts, but it was at a different price than was being negotiated during the time of the execution on this contract. I'm going to stop there.
I have a few questions, a few things to unpack there, but I'll work backwards from what you just said. So you said COVID was a game changer, correct?
Yes.
And so when this contract was negotiated, it was negotiated in, well, who knows when the negotiations started, but it was filed in 2019 with the
Correct.
commission. It was approved after COVID started during 2020.
Yes.
as I recall.
Yes.
And so, at that moment when it was executed and even leading up to the negotiations, how is that energy market different than the energy market we see now? If there's a difference?
Energy market's changing daily. The energy markets today are different than the energy markets yesterday, different 5 years ago. But certainly from the solar markets in particular, there has been a significant increase in pricing of solar contracts. A lot of that was due to supply chain issues and tariffs. And since that time, the pricing on solar has somewhat flattened, but the solar markets continue to stay well above those prices that were in place in the 2020 timeframe.
And so if you're discussing trying to get two solar contracts were those solar contracts solely to meet NewCor's demands? Was it a request by NewCor for solar energy, or was it just looking for additional, perhaps cheap energy options to serve the increased load?
I believe it's yes, all of the above, but I don't want to get into confidentiality.
No, that is
issues
fine.
On the NewCor contract for future considerations.
That's okay.
Okay.
If that was
Yes.
the case, I just didn't
Yes.
know if it was, all right.
Yes.
Then moving on. So even moving back to one of the questions, you're talking about the credit rating for Big Rivers, and that Big Rivers now has investment grade bonds. Is that correct?
Triple B stable according to Moody's, Fitch, and S&P, which is 2 notches above investment grade.
Okay. And then so, can Big Rivers directly tie that improvement in their credit rating to the NewCor load?
I believe we can. If you look at credit rating reports, they talked about the growth in Big Rivers, and they mentioned not only the NewCor steel mill, but also a couple of other large customers and customers, not members, a couple of other large customers that occurred during this time frame to help improve and allow us to get a higher credit rating.
Okay, all right. And so what does a higher credit rating mean to Big Rivers?
I'd have to ask you to do a DR, but generally, higher credit ratings lowers our basis point difference in borrowing. So if you get a half a point basis difference, or 1 or 2 point basis difference on that, or 10 points in financial speak, then in terms of financing, and we are a capital intensive company and we're borrowing, if we can get a lower interest rate, certainly is very beneficial to our members, lowers our overall costs. This project was good for our member owners. In fact, our member owner CEOs filed in support of our treatment of the FAC and how we currently treat the FAC from NewCor, in that it is member load, it is a cost that we have to serve them, and then that cost is borne by the members. I can tell you we are very transparent in showing our member owners what those costs are associated with the NewCor load. That, remember, is up for a finite period of time. It ends in the way it's currently being treated, or in the way the front end is being treated. For this time period, it was approximately a $4 million cost to our members. On average, on an annual basis, it's about an $11 million cost to our members. But the benefits that they have seen from this NewCor load have far outweighed those costs that they are paying for NewCor to cover those fuel adjustment clauses. And I'll go on to say that we have a MRSM in place, rate stabilization
Member,
mechanism.
member rate
Member rate
stabilization.
stabilization mechanism that's in place, that was genius, in my opinion. It allows us to earn up to a 1.3 tier on our margins, which currently is approximately $12.3, $12.8 million. Anything we earn above that MRSM target of 1.3, that goes back to our members in a split. 60% goes to retire regulatory assets of units, coal units that were retired by Big Rivers from the history. We have retired, I want to say nearly $230, $240 million of reg assets. Nearly half of the liability that was sitting out there has been reduced in a relatively short amount of time. The other 40% goes directly on the members' bills. It is credited to them as a benefit to them. So this mechanism that's in place, the benefits that we're seeing from NewCo, benefits that Big Rivers sees, it is not kept at Big Rivers. It goes directly back to support the members.
So the MSRM was not enacted as a result of this special contract?
I do not believe so.
You're just saying that because this special contract exists that brought in this new customer, that everyone is benefiting under the MSRM?
Correct.
From this customer's contribution
Correct.
to that, everything over the certain amount?
Yes,
That
yes, over the 12
people need to
million.
share.
Yes.
And does NewCo benefit from the MSRM?
I'm gonna have to direct, I do not believe they do during this time period.
Katie Cheatham responded.
Thank you, Katie.
No, they do not benefit from the MRSM credit at this time.
Okay, and is that due to the retail service agreement?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Thank you, I appreciate that. All right, so I'm going to have Mr. Rodness pass out what I've labeled as PSC Staff Exhibit Number 3. And this is Big River's FAC portion of their tariff, of its tariffs.
Thank you. You said staff 3,
Yes, Your Honor.
not confidential.
Okay, and then I'm gonna, oh, sorry, yeah, just keep on standing. And I'm gonna ask Mr. Rodness to pass out what we identified for, or what is labeled for identification purposes is PSC Staff Exhibit 4. This should be the last of the exhibits. And this is what is commonly referred to as the FAC Form A, filed on June 20th of 2023. Does everybody have a chance to look and see that, what they have? Okay. So, staff exhibit, would you confirm for me that it is Big River's FAC portion of its tariff as filed with the Public Service Commission?
Chris Warren responding, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. And then PSC Staff Exhibit 4 is what, like I said, we will call Form A, from filed June in 2023.
Chris Warren responding, that's correct.
Okay, all right, thank you. So before I get to questions about that, I do want to ask a question about, are there customers, and I know that Big Rivers doesn't have direct customers. They have 3 member owners, they make sales to that. So, but for the sake of argument, for the sake of ease, when I refer to customers, if Big Rivers has customers, just assume that we're speaking of the customer of a cooperative. But does Big Rivers have customers to whom, besides NewCo, to whom it does not charge an FAC?
Yes.
Chris Warren responding, in this review period, there were 2 other customers with market rate sales that did not get.
Okay, so thank you. And so could you describe how market rate sales work, say, compared to how the NewCo sales work?
Chris Warren responding, so the market rate sales is we purchase power and basically flow that back to those members, maybe with a little upcharge, but it's really just a flow through from the market to the member.
So that's
Or to the
wholesale.
customer. Yes.
That's,
So it's not, and does that differ from how power is provided to NewCo?
Chris Warren responding,
Without getting into confidential details, but,
so NewCo supplied by Big Rivers, which could be market or our generation.
but the other customers that are charged quote-unquote market rate, is that by contract?
Yes. Chris Warren responding, yes.
And the price of that, would that be dependent upon the market rate out in the wholesale electricity market?
Chris Warren responding, yes.
Okay, all right. So in those scenarios, would it be fair to characterize it that Big Rivers is not generating or expending fuel to serve those customers?
Chris Warren responding, correct,
Okay.
yes.
And so are the sales to those customers, the ones, not NewCo, but the ones that are not otherwise charged an FAC and that are charged a market rate, are those sales included in the fuel adjustment clause calculation?
Katie Cheatham responding, no, they are not included.
And are those expenses included in the fuel adjustment clause
Katie
calculation?
Cheatham responding, no, they are not
Okay,
included.
thank you. And why are those, both the sales and the expenses excluded from the calculation of the FAC charge, the FAC calculation?
Chris Warren responding, because it is a market-based sale.
Okay, all right. And so I ask that, please everybody take a look at PSE Staff Exhibit 3, which is Big River's FAC tariff. Okay? And so, please take a look at, on the first page of this document, the FAC factor. There's an equation there. That is what is also reflected, if you would take my word for it, in the fuel adjustment clause regulation, 807 KAR 5:056. The equation's the same there as it is here in Big River's tariff. So, can somebody please tell me what F times M over S over M is in this equation?
Katie Cheatham responded, you want me to just read what the tariff says, is that,
Tariff says, or your understanding.
okay. F is the expense of the fossil fuel and the base and in current month periods, and S is the sales and the base in the current month period.
Okay. So when you look at F times M, or, so you have F over S on the left side of the factor times M. Are those, not the base rates, but if, say, F times M would equal the fuel cost and purchase power cost to serve native load for that month?
Correct. Katie Cheatham responding, that is correct.
And then on the denominator of that portion of the equation, the S is the sales for that month. Is that correct?
Katie Cheatham responding, it's the sales for which the FAC is applied to.
Sales for which the FAC is applied to. But then would all costs be included in the numerator?
For all members. Katie Cheatham responding for all members.
So if we were to look at the rest of the tariff sheet, particularly scrolling down to, I think it is sheet number 64, which is the third page of the exhibit.
Are we still on 3?
Yes, still exhibit 3. Section 3 describes sales. Could you please point to where it says sales would not include sales to which an FAC factor is not charged? All right. If it's not there, just let me know, because I have another question.
Katie Cheatham responding, I can't pinpoint specifically there. However, when you look at the calculation in total and the over-under recovery, that builds in what was actually billed. And if your volumes don't match the prior month following, that your over-under recovery math doesn't work that way.
So let's talk about the over and under recovery. Let's say in a vacuum, let's say the NewCo contract doesn't exist as it is. How does the over and under recovery work? Why would there be a mismatch between months?
There would be a mismatch in volumes on your filing versus what you actually billed. Because in your over and under recovery, you're going to take the prior month filing, that rate times the volumes used to calculate that rate is what we should recover. But there's a 1 month lag. So we take that prior month rate times the current month sales volumes. And that current month sales volumes should match your prior month. And they're not going to coincide if NewCo does not pay an FAC, because we will not bill them under the current
Right, well,
contract.
I'm just talking, let's go back to 2018. You know, so I guess the question is, are there estimates in calculating the FAC factor?
Katie Cheatham responding, no. It's based on the actual month.
So based on the
Expense.
actual month, and so you do not forecast sales to make a calculation for the FAC factor?
Katie Cheatham responding, no, we do not.
Okay, and then, so what is the purpose of the over and under is because actuals don't add up, is that correct?
It's because there's a month lag on
Okay.
when the rate that we calculated is actually applied to the member bills,
Okay, and so the purpose of the over under is really
to true it up.
to true it up for the reality of the situation.
Right, just because that month lag, since it's based on actuals, we can't have that, calculate that rate, we've gotta get the books closed to calculate the rate, since there's no estimate. So you miss that window when billing has to be done in the first 10 days.
Right, and so when we start to talk about NewCo, when you talk about that is a deliberate exclusion. Well, let's go back. Let's take a step back and put a pin in this. So let's go back to the equation itself, if you would, please. The F meaning the current month fuel costs over the current month sales, correct? So when you get F divided by S, and let's forget about the base factor, the larger the denominator is, the sale, results in a lower monthly FAC factor, is that correct?
Katie Cheatham responding, that is correct.
And so by excluding sales to NewCo, but including the cost to serve NewCo, leads to a larger monthly FAC factor, is that correct?
Katie Cheatham responding, that's correct.
Okay. I think I failed to establish that fact, but that's good. So let's go back to the purpose of the over and under adjustment in the FAC Form A's, correct? So So you said before, you know, in a vacuum, I said, for example, in 2018, let's look at that the purpose of the over and under recovery is to account for that 1 month lag that occurs. Between when you get the bills, you apply the factor, you send it out. And that's gonna be exacerbated for the cooperatives as well, isn't it not? You have Big Rivers has a 1 month recovery?
That's
And then the cooperatives have another month on top of that. Is that the case? If you don't know, you don't know. It's not important to this, but,
Chris Warner responding, I'm not exactly sure.
okay, all right. Different docket, I'll get those questions on that. So, but that's just to recover the reality on the ground. What I am asking about is that the decision to not include the sales portion in the denominator of calculating the fuel adjustment clause is not necessarily to what I call catch up on the reality of the situation in a 1 month lag. It is an exclusion for a portion of the equation that leads to an FAC factor that is different than would otherwise, that if NewCo is treated like any other normal retail customer. Is that correct?
Katie Cheatham responding, that is correct.
Okay, all right. So, do the format. I ask that people take a reference to PSC Form A, which is PSC Staff Exhibit, sorry, Big Rivers Form A, but it's PSC Staff Exhibit number 4. Now, the review period for case number 2024-00141 runs from November 1st, 2022 through April 30th, 23. Is that correct? It's in the caption of the case, it's correct.
Yes. Chris Warner responding, that's correct.
Okay. And then, so the case number 24-149 includes, I think it's May 1st through October 31st of 2023. Is that correct?
Katie
Chris
Cheatham.
Warner responding, that's correct.
Okay. And so, when did NewCo start taking service under the retail service agreement?
Chris Warner responding, December of 2022 is the first month
Okay.
that they did not pay the FAC.
Okay. So, and prior to that was NewCo taking service under a tariff,
Yeah,
tariff rate, and so,
As they were starting ramping up service, construction.
and what was it, December of 2022 when they basically began full-scale production? Well, I can't ask you about production, but they ramped up to a full service. They were no longer using electricity for construction purposes, et cetera.
Chris Warner responding, that's correct.
Okay. And so, exhibit number 4, which I've provided, is a Form A from Big Rivers filed on June 20th, 2023, which would include data for the May 2023 expense month. Is that correct?
Katie Cheatham responding, that's correct.
And it's for FAC factor that would be billed in July of 2023.
Katie Cheatham responding, that is correct. Billed in July based on June service.
Right, okay. And so, 2 things that I would like to confirm. Was NewCo taking service under the retail service agreement at the time the information was filled out in this Form A?
Katie Cheatham responding, yes, they were.
Okay. And that this Form A falls into one of the review periods for these 2 FAC cases that we're open right now.
Katie Cheatham responding, that is correct.
Okay, all right. So just scrolling through this document, I was taking a look on the first page of the document after the cover letter. We have the fuel cost for the month, of the sales cost for the month. And we see the fuel cost over the sales. And in this form, which I pulled from our website, which was filed here, does the fuel cost include costs to service NewCo?
Katie Cheatham responding, yes, it does.
And do the sales exclude the sales, energy sales to NewCo?
Katie Cheatham responding, yes, it does.
Okay. And then so, we turn to page 2 of this Form A. We see a variety of how we get to the costs for the fuel, is that correct?
Katie Cheatham responding, that's correct.
Okay. In this, are there any line items specific to NewCo in calculating the fuel costs?
Katie Cheatham responding, no, there are not.
Okay. And then, if we turn to page 3 of 4, we look at the sales schedule for the expense month. Is that correct?
Katie Cheatham responding, that is correct.
Okay. And then so we have, in the top part, we have A, which is generation, purchases including interchange. And then the next line down, we have a whole list of other things for sales, either their debits or their credits on this. Is there anything in here that specifically mentions sales to NewCo?
Katie Cheatham responding, in section B, the line item labeled non-tariff market rate sales to members includes the volumes for NewCo in that line, and it's an addition. However, if you look at the total sales, the line item, it's section A minus B, so it's excluding those volumes.
So non-tariff market rate sales to members. NewCo is included in that total?
Katie Cheatham responding, that's correct.
Okay. Does NewCo get the non-tariff market rate? Or am I touching on confidential information here? I'm not asking for the specific rate. Let's put it out this way. If I were to look at this form in 2018, would it still list non-tariff market rate sales to members?
Katie Cheatham responding, I believe there was a slightly different terminology when the smelters were included, but I'd have to go back, that's subject to check.
Okay.
But something very similar, but I think it might have said
Well,
something.
let me
along
ask you this,
those
what
lines.
else is included in here besides sales to NewCo?
Any one that has the market rate sales,
Okay.
not on tariff.
So when we refer to market rate sales, going back, that is when Big Rivers purchases power on the market for specific customers, is that correct?
Katie Cheatham responding, that's correct.
Mr. Kama, correct me if stop me if I'm starting to touch on any information that's confidential. But is that how service is priced to NewCo?
But I think we can say, like, qualitatively, the answer to that, but not, just as long as we don't quantify the.
I don't need a quantity.
Chris Warren responding, in this, the beginning part of the NewCo contract, it's a fixed price.
Okay, and so beginning meaning that the contract, it's still in effect right now, but at some point it will end.
Correct. Chris Warren responding, correct.
Okay, all right. So the decision to, so NewCo doesn't necessarily get market rate sales, is that correct?
Chris Warren responding, their price is.
Well, it's saying that they typically would not be deemed a non-tariff market rate sales.
Don Gully, that is correct.
Okay, yet their sales are included in this to be backed out of the sales calculation. Okay, so how was this decision made? NewCo starts to take service under the new retail service agreement December 1, 2022. At what point was Big Rivers faced with a decision on how to treat this?
Chris Warren responding, so we ran into this modeling the budget, or that's when it came up, when we were modeling the budget, how to treat NewCo, and we have other customers with fixed rate contracts that are excluded from the FAC. The fact that NewCo was a member changed things. As Mr. Goley said, it was kind of a unicorn. It was member fuel, but they also did not pay the FAC. So those were the initial discussions on how it would be treated, was in the budgeting forecasting process.
So at what point would this modeling forecasting have taken place?
I mean, we budget 4 years out, so
Mhm.
I don't, it was at least sometime in 22, but maybe before that.
Well, because in 2022, the bills started, the bills to NewCo would have changed, would they have not?
That, Chris Warren responding, that's correct.
I guess, and before that first bill was sent, was Big Rivers aware of, that there might, of a question of how sales to NewCo would be treated?
Chris Warren responding, we had budgeted it this way, at least in the budget for 2023 that was developed in 2022.
All right, so budgeting, when you mean budgeting for it, it's one thing to put it in a particular column, it's another thing to say, this is how Big Rivers is going to recover it, is that correct?
Chris Warren responding, in the budget, we put in the fuel for NewCo, but took out the megawatt hour sales for that customer.
When looking at the fuel adjustment clause?
Correct.
Okay, so you come over to the column about how it's gonna be, just, basically, you're trying to make it sum up, right? You're trying to, that you have, you want it so that the costs to serve NewCo are recovered from someone, and so that you don't have an under recovery over on your ledger, is that correct?
That's correct, and if we put the megawatt hour sales in the denominator, we would have that over under recovery every month.
Okay. All right, and then so what, if any, other options were explored for how to treat, to treat this? Let me ask you this. At what point was it discovered that there might be an issue with this? Where that the realities of the contract that was given might lead to some irregularities in the fuel adjustment clause? Or otherwise, on the balance sheets of Big Rivers?
It was prior to December of 22, Chris Warren responding, one option would have been a base rate increase to offset the fuel costs for NewCo.
Mhm.
And, we discussed it with the highest levels in the company, and everyone felt, it was deemed this was a member fuel, where at some point this customer would pay the FAC, but we didn't have a recovery mechanism from this customer and the megawatt hours.
Well, I mean, you had a method of recovery, is that not correct? You just said that they could have explored a base rate increase, correct?
Chris Warren responding, a base rate increase would have been an option.
Okay, and, besides the necessity to recover the cost associated with the new core load, would there have been any other impetus for a base rate case at the time?
Chris Warren responding, I don't have that information with me.
That's okay, it's not necessary, I don't need to follow up on that. Were there other methods perhaps discussed to recover these costs? Besides the base rate increase, besides omitting the sales from the fuel adjustment clause?
Chris Warren responding, none that I'm aware of.
Okay, all right. So, is there any document at which I can look, I, or the public can look at this moment that would say what portion of this, portion of the FAC factor is attributable, let's say, increase to the FAC factor, is attributable to the fact that the sales to serve NewCo are excluded from the fuel adjustment clause calculation?
Chris Warren responding, so are you talking the difference in what they would pay versus?
Let's just say for the sake of argument, is there somewhere to say, maybe on a monthly filing or in a backup filing, saying, here are the sales to NewCo, and this is what is excluded, this is what it costs to service, here are the sales to it, one's included in the numerator, the other's not included in the denominator. Probably in better Queen's English than what I just said, but is there somewhere people can say, no, I think Mr. Gully testified that it had been transparent with the cost to serve NewCo, but where would I go to look for that transparency?
Don Gully, can I answer that question?
Yes, by all means.
Thank you, sir. And we're gonna have to fast forward to 2024.
Okay.
When I started, and in the spirit of transparency, this came to my attention in almost immediately, it was in the February, March timeframe, I believe, that we were looking at the costs associated with NewCo, the recovery associated with NewCo, this unicorn that was providing benefit to the members. And in our monthly board meetings, we began to show exactly what the cost of NewCo is to our members in dollars and cents per megawatt hour. We have been tracking that. We have been sharing that openly with our board, our member owner CEOs, so that they can see what those costs are associated with it. We also provide detail on NewCo load, what it currently is operating at, but through the budgeting process, we're forecasting an increase in load from NewCo. And again, those are openly shared and shown to the board on a monthly basis. When this came about in the questions for this FAC, we believe that it's important that we also highlight and share this information with the commission on what the costs are associated with NewCo. Again, for a period of time. We've offered some alternatives to how we might be able to recover these costs, but this is a pivotal moment for Big Rivers. As I shared with you earlier, the annual costs associated with NewCo in the neighborhood of $11 million as their usage increases. During this finite period of time, that number could grow, could shrink, could stay the same depending on the cost of fuel and how the balance of the portfolio is working. But if we are unable to recover it as we're currently recovering, we've given a couple of other options because this is such a unicorn in how it was treated, how it was brought to the state, effort from the governor, from regional economic development agencies, and we're still fully supportive of the contract that we signed with NewCo, and we'll honor that contract. But if we have I'll call it a nuclear option, and we are not able to recover those costs associated with NewCo, it will hurl us immediately into a rate case. I have worked to change the focus at Big Rivers to serve our members and to be member focused. I've made great progress in the last 18 months. We have a list of items on the horizon related to gas generation development. CPCN is expected to be filed for replacement to our Reed unit that was retired, forcibly retired. We have an IRP that we're currently working on that we will file ahead of schedule with this commission next spring. And then that will inform us and chart the course for us over the next 5 years. If we are forced into not being able to recover these costs in one method, again, recoverable costs from a member, fuel costs from a member, that has benefited everyone. If we're not able to recover those in some manner, forcing us into a rate case, it will change our trajectory over the next 3 to 5 years.
The $11 million represents the fuel costs.
$11 million
And that-
represents approximate annual fuel costs associated
Annual.
with, annual fuel costs associated with new core load.
Okay, and back to Mr. Penny's question about where the public would look to see this, how the difference in costs and sales are treated for this customer. You said it's shared openly at meetings with your members
With our board members, yes, and with the
Board
member owner
members.
CEOs,
and with your member owner CEOs.
yes.
This, you only have 3 customers.
Only have 3 members,
One of them is Meade County,
Correct.
RECC, which has this customer.
yes, ma'am.
So I assume they already know.
Yes, Meade, Jackson Purchase, and Kenergy, all of those member owner CEOs know what those costs are on a monthly basis, and what the trend has been of the new core costs associated with
So
that.
your customers
Our customers. Now.
have known
when-
all
when-
about this.
But when the members do not see it in their overall fuel adjustment, one of the options that we offered up is to actually put a line item on members' bill, the members of Kenergy, the members of Meade, the members of Jackson Purchase. That is one of the alternatives. It's not my favorite because it would require costs, programming,
Yeah.
and information. My preference would be to offer it in a quarterly or semi-annual basis to members. We have publications that we can put this information in. I am all about transparency, truth and honesty in what we do and how we serve our members.
Big River's obligation is to its 3 members. And then I guess you're saying that to the extent that those 3 members have other customers, it's their
120,000
responsibility.
members out there, meters that are on the end of the line.
But as far as the transparency that we're talking about here, are you saying that that's your responsibility is to your 3 members, and then your members from there, it's their responsibility to share with their customers?
That is correct.
Whether or not fuel costs and sales are reported the same way for one customer as they are the
That
other.
is correct.
And I'm sorry, Commissioner.
Were they aware of the customers, were they aware of this transparency prior to you coming in?
I don't think anybody really thought about the fuel adjustment clause until the budgeting process back in 2022, 2023 timeframe. I know it was not discussed during contract negotiations. There's nothing on the record, there's nothing that we have that's associated with that, that I'm aware of.
Commissioners? Okay, thank you. So, I'm not suggesting any course of action, but I have to ask these scenarios. for it. So, under the fuel adjustment clause review, under the regulation, the commission can periodically review on 6 months and then a 2-year basis the application of the fuel adjustment clause. And it can order discharge in the form of credits to customers, any costs that were recovered that it deemed to be unreasonable, the PSC deemed to be unreasonable. If the commission were to determine that Big Rivers had incorrectly calculated its fee and included unreasonable costs in the fuel adjustment clause and ordered a refund to its customers, what effect would that have on Big Rivers?
Immediate rate case. We are projecting in our, I will go back to 2024 results in our budget. We were about $17 million in margin. If you subtract approximately 11 million from that 17 million, that would take our margins down below that threshold of 1.3. And let me add, as you look back and you look from the time period from 2022 forward, I go back to the MRSM, the rate stabilization mechanism. And our members have already benefited from steps that Big Rivers has taken, both through reduction of that reg asset of nearly $240 million, subject to check on that exact number, and then a direct credit that has gone and continues to go on members' bill. So a refund in terms of that, there's already been benefit to those members as a result of NewCo coming to Brandenburg.
So hypothetically, in a base rate case, in a base rate case, and I'm gonna look also at the panel, because you might be better off in answering this, but in a base rate case, does that, they reset, or has potential to reset the formula for the MSRM? Is that correct?
Chris Warren responding, yes, that could be an option.
And in that option, could Big Rivers, I mean, would NewCo's contract be taken into account into that reset, or would NewCo benefit now that if it would be the first base rate case of which I'm aware since NewCo has become a member, would NewCo's contract change at all as a result of the base rate case?
Don Gully, no, the contract would not change.
Okay.
We will honor the contract, and hypothetically speaking, if you're talking about a base rate change, we have to remember that this NewCo contract, in the way it's currently being executed, has a finite time period on it. And a base rate increase to incorporate any shortfalls associated with that contract, the way it is executed, will change at a point in time. So you're perhaps, I don't call it premature, but you're maybe collecting more. At some point in time, you may be collecting more than you need. And I will say, as I talked about our plans and what we have in strategic priorities and stepping forward, first and foremost is replacement of a Reed CT 65 megawatt turbine that has been retired. That is paramount for us. For reliability, we understand and know what the cost of capacity looks like in MISO. We have 280 employees at Big Rivers. Our plates are full with what we are doing and have on the plate for the Reed CT, for the IRP, and for what comes after that. This would shift focus of time and resource, hypothetically speaking, if there were a different outcome here in terms of having to credit and repay and force us into an immediate rate case. We do have a rate case planned on the horizon. It's part of that conversation through that IRP formula and work that we're doing that I hope becomes mostly useful to this commission. We expect to have a case in the 2027, 2028 timeframe is what we are currently projecting. And it's time. It's time.
So I guess my question before about what would happen if the commission said, a refund of what had been collected through the FAC, which not just be this review period, it'd probably be all the things that are collected, and then also you can no longer recover, Big Rivers can no longer recover the, through the FAC, say to the exclusion of any other recovery mechanisms.
Correct.
You said it would require an immediate rate case. Are you talking about emergency rates?
Yes, I'm talking about emergency rates because our current budget forecast would not be able to handle both refund and under recovery of member load that has fuel associated with it.
Okay. And then, so, is it not just your budget? I mean, is it correct that Big Rivers would need an emergency rate case because it would be in danger of violating its debt covenants?
Yes, we would not meet our 1.3 requirements.
And we can request for a break whenever you get to a stopping point.
Okay. All right, I only have a few more questions if that's the case, or, we
Yeah.
could break. I'm almost finished.
Let's take a break when you get to a good stopping point, and then we'll.
Your Honor, this is a good point. I've been told.
Okay.
Thank you.
Chair.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're back on the record in case number 2024-00141 and case number 2024-00149, fuel adjustment clause, 6-month periods for Big Rivers. And Counselor, you may continue.
All right. Thank you, Your Honor. Okay, I don't make promises that these are some of my last questions, but I can make representations. I'd like to refer everybody to Big River's response to Commission staff's third request for information, case number 24-141. And it's going to be pages 13 through 15. And these are, let me ask you the question this. Are these proposed options to the new core sales through the NAFAC?
Yes.
Okay. And could you please walk me through the first presented option?
Okay, the first option is really what we have discussed today and how the FAC is calculated, how Nucor's, the costs associated with fuel is excluded, or Nucor does not pay, is included in the member's rate, in the member's FAC, with just an addition of transparency, which is what we were already doing in our current operations to our board, but would be more transparent to them. I would offer there may be some other alternatives, subsets of option one. We could post those numbers in Form A that's reported to the commission, available to the public, and report it out. That is the least disruptive.
So when you say least disruptive, and I apologize for interrupting, but I'll lose my train of thought. Least disruptive meaning that is it lowest cost to the utilities, or it doesn't disrupt the recovery of the cost to the through the FAC?
It does not disrupt recovery.
Okay.
And it is least cost in terms of resources required, cost, and I'll step through those here as we go through option two now.
Okay. Yes.
Option two is very similar, but recognizing that we have a non-FAC provision, and we're getting recovering capacity costs through our non-FAC component. Because this is a unicorn and is different, this would also be a unicorn way of treatment for the fuel adjustment, the fuel associated with Nucor. We could recover through our non-FAC, but that adjustment only takes place on an annual basis.
Is it adjusted on a historical or an estimated basis?
It is historical.
Okay.
I believe subject to check. I'm looking over. Yes, subject to check, but it is historical. It changes every September. And so adjusting every September would create an under recovery in terms of cash to Big Rivers. So that is where the additional cost would come in for Big Rivers and utilization of cash. But it is a viable option. And I would say with this, we would continue to provide the transparency that we would do in and under option one as well.
And let me ask you this: what are since it's adjusted on an annual basis, does it have a negative or positive effect on the cash flows for Big Rivers?
So I would have to ask one of my staff members in the recovery of non-FAC.
Chris Warner responding, so the non-FAC it would be a lag in when we recover the cash.
So you would look at the non-recovered, let's just say the new core sales, if they were to be excluded from the monthly calculation of the FAC, wherever that annual reporting period is for it, where you take a look at it, you'd look at the previous year, plug it into the factor for the non-tariff PPA, and then that would be applied to members' bills. That factor would be, but then you're just recovering costs you didn't recover from the previous year, is that correct?
Chris Warren responding, that's correct.
Okay.
Let me answer also, from just isolating NewCo perspective, yes, it would be an under recovery and would be a cash position. Because because the non-fac takes into account other components and capacity markets change in the MISO capacity market, they're seasonal, they're adjusted beginning in June time period. There could be under recovery in other aspects of that non-fac component.
Right, okay, all right.
Can I step on to number three?
Yes, sir.
As an option? And number three would be to revise the MRSM and actually establish a new line item on customers' bills. And when I say customers' bills, I'm talking about the 120,000 meters that are the members of our member owners. That would require time, resources, programming, and may actually create some confusion with the members in seeing the line items. There are already line items on members' bills in terms of MRSM credit. It shows up as a credit, and sometimes I've learned that members don't understand that that's a credit. It's a line on a bill. So there's some education that needs to take place there. But that would be a direct link and visibility to the end-use members. I would offer that the same could be accomplished by reporting on Form A if members are interested in doing it, with communication through Kentucky Living and through our members who are actually responsible for that relationship with those end-use customers, end-use members. They can provide information relative to the cost associated with the NewCo
Is
contract.
that sort of a fifth option or an offshoot of option three then?
That's
to start
option three.
reporting on Form A?
That is option three.
So the reporting on Form A part, is that an addition?
That would be a subset.
There's a subset of option one. if I can
Subset of
clarify.
option one is to report on Form A, and I would say that is very, very viable for us to do that. Option four.
I'm gonna stop you for a second.
Please.
Because I have a question on option three.
Thank you.
And so option three is just simply a tracker. It's just a line item saying, here are costs, like how would you envision that state?
So I would suggest, because we do track it monthly, and we show the board what those costs are on a monthly basis, on a per megawatt hour basis, and it can be $5 to $6 a megawatt hour in a range. Drilling that down to a cents per kilowatt hour is very, very small. And there would be a lag of time.
Yeah.
You heard the complexities of a 1 month lag.
I guess
2 month lag.
my question is that it's just simply a reporting mechanism. It doesn't change the calculation of the MSRM?
It does not change the calculation. It does not change the recovery. It just provides visibility to those end-use members.
Okay, and just a question, the increased sales to NewCo, does that positively or negatively affect the calculation of the MSRM in terms of the customer credit?
A lot of levers and pulleys.
Exactly, I was wondering about that.
And the expectation is increase in load. If we're managing our portfolio appropriately, then it certainly clearly is a benefit. And again, we're talking about a finite period of time here. At the end of that finite period of time, clearly a benefit to the members.
All Fourth option, I think we've covered it a little bit.
Nuclear, I called it the nuclear option, yes, would put us into an emergency rate case. Again, Commissioners, Chair, this is a pivotal moment for us, and will chart the course for the next 3 to 5 years. I mentioned earlier that Reed, and I want to restate, Reed is not retired yet. Thank you, Counselor. Reed is not retired yet. It was on forced outage. We did file with MISO, attachment Y. It is not recoverable. And we have a period of time with which we can interconnect using the generation interconnection agreement we have with MISO. That is a short timetable in terms of building new generation. We have 3 years to do that. Our time and attention is focused on that. We will have to come before this commission for retirement of the Reed CT, and also now before the EPIC Commission as well.
And so, just a quick question with regard to the Reed CT. You talked about unicorns in regard to NewCo. Is there, and I seem to recall somewhere testimony or discussion that the Reed CT is somewhat of a unicorn among combustion turbines. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. It was one of 6 that was in service. 6 that were built like it, according to GE and the people who came and looked at the condition of the Reed CT. Our staff did a wonderful job of maintaining that CT for as long as they did. If you don't mind, I'll just take a minute just to brag on the staff at Big Rivers. When GE opened the shell and looked at the Reed CT, they didn't recognize some of the parts, and some of those parts have been rebuilt by our staff to keep it viable for as long as it is. It was the last of its kind that was continuing to operate. But that is very important to our portfolio. It's very important to us for reliability. It's very important from an interconnection standpoint and the value of having interconnection capability with MISO. It's one of the items that I want to make sure our staff is fully focused on and not embroiled in the midst of an emergency rate case, is what I'm pleading for here today. That fourth option, also, I think it really doesn't take into account the value that NewCo has brought to this region. And the steps that were taken at the time, and they were bold steps, and it provided benefit to the members. There was a period of time after Big Rivers had lost a significant amount of load and revenue, being on the brink of bankruptcy, and finding ways, and credit the staff for doing an incredible job to stave off that bankruptcy and keep Big Rivers viable through this interim period, when there was not only this one unicorn, but there were other load and economic development activities that took place to help. It was recognized by the ratings agencies on the efforts that we made to land this steel mill in Brandenburg. It's provided benefit to not only Meade, but also to Jackson Purchase and to Kenergy, as supported by the letters of support in this docket by the member owner CEOs. Is there a fifth option? I don't know. We've provided a range. In order of preference, they're somewhat in order of preference, but above all, I want to make sure that what we do is transparent, not only to our member owners, but to our members as well. And make sure we maintain credibility here at this commission.
Commission staff has no further questions, Your Honor.
Commissioner Rea?
Did you just see me? Oh, sorry. Good morning, sorry.
Good morning.
I think the questions have been asked that I was gonna ask, but just as a follow-up, and I'm not sure if you can answer this or someone else wants to, but the push from the state at the time for NewCo and the community, have you seen the growth in Brandenburg and jobs follow? Has it been a win for the community as well as members?
I will say undoubtedly it has been a win. I'm not sure it was everything that was promised, but I also recognize that NewCo is an international company and operates on a global basis. And, you know, so far, there has been improvements, but NewCo has not yet hit the very peaks that it said it would in the initial conversations. But my hopes are, and as the economy continues to improve and we don't have things like COVID and supply chain issues, that we continue to see improvements that we have. But it was integral to that area, integral to Meade in helping them in terms of the secondary growth in homes, in workers, in dollars spent in the local community by the workers that are there, that work for NewCo.
Okay. Going forward, and the kind of the environment we're in with tariffs, do you see, and I'm not sure you can even answer this, NewCo sales being affected by this, or?
You know, tariffs, are you talking about this morning's tariffs or this afternoon's tariffs?
Right.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I don't know. I know, you know, a lot of their production is for wind production, steel for wind production, so. But they are healthy. The forecasts that we are seeing is an increase in megawatt hours moving from 2024 to 2025. We're expected to see about I'll do the math in my head, but probably a 15% increase in sales, megawatt hour sales to NewCo in that neighborhood. So that's a positive.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
And then the benefits of those sales get shared through the MSMR.
Yes,
with all
correct.
the customers. All right, I think my questions all, I've asked as we've gone along. Do you have any redirects, sir?
I do have a few follow-up questions.
Your Honor, may I, before he redirects, may I move to have those exhibits accepted into the record?
Any objection?
No objections.
I think you did some, but to the extent that they weren't yet, okay.
Thank
Let
you.
them be admitted, and you have them already, Candace, and
Yes,
Mark?
I do.
Okay. I had 1 through 4 and then a confidential.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Cheatham, I'd like to follow up a little bit on like the market rate sales discussion. Could you tell me a little bit about the other customers that don't pay the FAC?
Without getting any confidential areas, but we've had some for years that we have that don't pay the FAC that we have always taken out of that line item as to not impact the over-under recovery mechanism, so we match what's actually billed to the customers on a monthly basis when we calculate that over-under recovery.
So in one of the responses, and for it later, but there was a discussion that was not confidential that said that like 2 of the customers that don't pay the FAC, it's a portion of the load for block mining that's served at market rates. Do you recall that?
Yes,
And then the other one, or one of the other ones was backup power for Domtar under the contract when it was at market rates.
that's correct, because we can identify those purchases were made directly for those customers.
And so you said, so those market rate sales have been excluded from the FAC calculation on the volume side for how long?
For as long as I've been doing the calculation, so at least 4 to 5 years, at least. I'm not sure when those contracts came into fruition, but as long as I'd been doing the calculation, it's treated that way.
And then when Big Rivers was deciding how to treat NewCo for purposes of the FAC calculation, on the volume side, did it seem reasonable to treat them like the other customers that don't pay the FAC?
It did.
And then, as Mr. Penny did point out, that Big Rivers treats NewCo differently than the market rate sales for purposes of the expense set. Can you explain why that decision was made?
That decision was different because they are, we don't have purchases for NewCo that aren't strictly identified. They're included, they're a member, and so they're all bucketed together. So any fuel or purchases made to serve members are all together. Those other ones that you mentioned, we know specifically what purchases were made.
So when Big Rivers had to go out and buy power for Domtar's backup needs, that was a specific purchase that was then allocated to Domtar and excluded from the FAC expenses.
That's correct.
But then you said that NewCo was different because it's just treated as member load?
Correct, as they are a member.
And so like the fuel and purchase power that's goes through the fact that's attributable to NewCo, are those reasonably incurred?
Yes,
fuel
they are
costs?
reasonable costs. They're either from our generation or our economic purchases that are made.
And should Big Rivers be able to recover those?
Absolutely.
Mr. Brown, Mr. Penny asked you about the response to, I think it was PSC 1-15 in case number 2023-00149. And specifically, he referenced the FERC settlement and whether Big Rivers should have updated how the outages were named in the GAD system. Is there a reason Big Rivers didn't update its GAD system after the FERC settlement?
Oh, yeah, the reason we did not update after the FERC settlement is that Big Rivers did not admit fault in the FERC settlement. Therefore, we kept our original outage type in the outage schedule here.
And we can follow more if the commission asks that data request. We can still provide the calculations of the impact, if that's okay.
Your Honor, I don't think Commission staff has seen a need for a post-hearing data request on this, given the redirect.
If you do, then we'll let you.
Thank you. Mr. Gully, so you talked a little bit about the Big Rivers investment grade credit rating and how it improved after NewCo signed on. Is Big Rivers required under its RUS loan contract to have 2 investment grade credit ratings?
Yes, it is, and we subsequently have 3.
But before the NewCo contract, Big Rivers was not in compliance with that requirement.
That is correct.
And if Big Rivers is pushed into an emergency rate case, do you think that would impact Big Rivers' credit ratings?
It would be highly detrimental, would be reported immediately to the ratings agencies, and would certainly have a significant negative impact on our outlook from the ratings agencies.
And could it affect Big Rivers' compliance with its RUS loan contract?
It could conceivably impact that.
And could it make borrowing more difficult?
Would make borrowing, number one, more difficult, but significantly more costly.
And, Mr. Gully, the members filed a public comment in the 149 case, which was then incorporated into your data request response in the 141 case. Can you just describe that public comment a little bit?
Yes, that public comment came from each of the 3 Big Rivers member owner CEOs, recognizing the importance of this decision, recognizing the impact that it has had on Big Rivers. 75 to 80 cents of every dollar that the end-use members spends comes from Big Rivers for both generation and transmission services. And they recognize that our continuation of what we were doing, or some subset thereof, option 1 through 3, would be ultimately beneficial for their members as well.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
No recross.
Okay. Any reason I can't excuse all these witnesses?
I still want to stay.
You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. All right, all the witnesses are excused. We've admitted all the exhibits. To the extent that we anticipate having post-hearing data requests, can we have those requests summarized by June 13th?
The commission staff will have it.
If you do, then by June 13th, in case you decide to. I won't hold you to that. If you decide you want to issue them by 6/13, assuming they do have any by June 13th, how much time would you need, Mr. Cuniff, to respond?
I think a week would be sufficient.
Okay, so, I don't know what day of the week the 20th is on.
I think it's a Friday.
Friday, by the 20th? Okay.
That works.
Okay, and if Big Rivers would like to submit a brief, 2 weeks after the 20th. So, I think that's about 4th of July, but we won't do it on that date. Let me see. If you wanted to submit a brief, would Monday the 7th of July work?
That works for us.
Okay. Any further matters before we adjourn? Anything else?
Nothing for Big Rivers.
Nothing for staff.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
We're adjourned.